Hey there, and welcome to the Parallax Landscape. Now for the background, it's comprised of 5 different panoramas. I flew to Las Vegas and traveled around the Red Rocks Canyon desert in order to capture these images. We brought them all together to create one image that doesn't exist anywhere on Earth. In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to take all of these panoramas and blend them together perfectly. We're going to show you how to do everything in black and white first, which helps for matching light levels and makes compositing easier. Next, we're going to show you how to color match all of our different backgrounds to make them all look like they were taken in the same scene. Next, we're going to show you how to cut your subjects out from the background, including tricky areas that require things like the pen tool and the refine mask tool. And to finish it off, we're going to place our subjects into the scene, we're going to color match everything, and even include a special effect for creating halos around our subjects. Alright, now as far as our files are concerned, we have in here Parallax Landscape all 4 of our tutorials. Now the images for this tutorial are located right here. Let's go to 01 Parallax Getting Started. Here are our tutorial images, and here we can see Parallax Landscape. Here are all 5 of our landscape. These are the panoramas we were just talking about. There we can see one there, as well as 14 different images you have to choose from, people jumping in the air, and we're going to show you how to cut them out from their backgrounds. Alright guys, we got a ton to learn. Let's jump into our tutorial. Hey there, and welcome to the Parallax Landscape Part 1. In this section, we're going to be creating our background from a bunch of different panoramic images. Let's go ahead and load those up. Now here in Photoshop, I want to get them all into the same document. So I'm going to go to File, down here to Scripts, and Load Files into Stack. Alright, then we're going to hit this Browse button, and then we're going to search here in our Tutorial Images folder. You'll see Parallax Landscape, and then Landscape, and then we're going to shift click on 1 through 5. So we're going to go ahead and open all 5 of those. Hit open there. It's going to load them up there and hit OK. Basically this just puts everything into the same document so we can work on it easier. Alright, now we've got 5 different panoramas. Let's hit F for full screen, and we're just going to zoom out a little bit, and we can see we've got huge images. Let's go to image and then down to image size. We're at 26,000 pixels wide, which is very big. This is taken from a bunch of different photos taken together and then pre-stitched together to form these panoramas. Alright, now our goal here is to create one landscape that's a combination of all these different landscapes. Basically to create something that's like fantasy based, something that does not exist on Earth, and also something that's really pretty. So we're going to be using these different elements to create those different landscapes. So what we need to do is kind of like analyze what we're going to be working with here. And in the creation stage, basically what I do is I bring all my images into Photoshop and just move them around and play and, you know, like size things differently and see what everything fits together. So I've already done that, and this go round, basically I'm just going to show you exactly what we need to do. Okay, now we have 5 different landscapes here. We've got, this is going to be our sky. Alright, this is going to be in the far left side of the image in the background. This is going to make our foreground. This layer here is going to be the right side. This is the mountain on the right side. And this layer here is going to be in the immediate foreground. These rocks and things like that are going to be right next to the camera. Alright, well I do know that we want this, there we go, Parallax Landscape 3. This is going to be our sky in the image. So the first thing I want to do, let's go ahead and move that down to the bottom. That's going to be our sky. And then with the rest of these images, I want to go ahead and remove the sky because we already know we want this, we want the Parallax 3, we want that to be our sky. So the rest of these images, we want to go ahead and remove the sky. Alright, so let's go ahead and start off with this guy, Parallax 5. Doesn't matter which one you start with. It's a very simple process. What we're going to do is use our magic wand tool. So we'll hit W or click on your magic wand tool, and then I want to click around to see about how much we're getting selected. And you can see a lot's getting selected, but I could deal with a little bit more, and that has to do with this number up here at the top called tolerance. So the higher this number, the more is going to get selected. So let's go ahead and put this about 20, 24, 25. And now we'll click on our sky, and we can see quite a bit get selected, which is, this looks pretty good. So let's hold down the Shift key and click a couple times in our background. There we go. And now we've made that into a selection. So that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look at the edge of that selection. Now, it looks pretty good, but I think it could be a little bit closer to the mountains. So we're going to go to Select and then down to Refine Edge. Alright, so select and then down to Refine Edge. And now here in our view, we can choose a lot of different views. I'm going to go ahead and choose On Layers. Alright, now we can see it's actually the inverse of what we wanted. You can see, like, normally you'd be able to, this should be mountains here. It's actually the inverse of what we wanted. So let's go ahead and hit cancel there. We selected our sky. Let's go hit select and then down to inverse. Alright, so now we're selected mountains. So let's go up here to select and then down to refine edge. Alright, and what we should see are just the mountains. Looking good. Now let's go to on layers and we can see what these mountains look like now with a little bit of our new background. It looks pretty good. Now I'm using this tool here to kind of fix the edge of our mountains. You can see as I let go, it's going to go ahead and refine the edge of the mountains. There we go. Now do this if you need to. We're not going to do this on every single image, but you can always paint right there on your edge. What I usually do, let's go ahead and bring our smoothing down to 0. Alright, and here where we're going to start off by shifting our edge either in or out. So let's hit 0 on our edge now. Alright, and let's take a look at what shifting our edge in looks like. It should pull this towards the mountains, and you can see it pulled towards the mountains a little bit. Now as I bring in smoothing a little bit more, let's go ahead and bring that up to about 4 or 5. That should pull the edge in even more. So let's go ahead and bring that up a little bit more. Alright, and we'll shift the edge in just a little bit more, down to about 100. Alright, that looks pretty good. So let's zoom out, and now we see from here, we basically see our mountain range. So we're going to hit OK. Now I do want to click on Remember Settings. Now I know that was a lot to kind of focus on for this one background, but we're going to be doing the exact same thing for all of them. So if you guys didn't get everything, every single step, no biggie. We're going to do this a few different times. Basically, we just wanted to select the sky, then inverse the selection, and then refine the edge so it expands a little bit. So when I delete the sky out using a layer mask, we're going to not see anything left of the sky. So let's go ahead and click on our layer mask, and there we can see these are our mountains, and now you can see they're on our new background, which is great. Now, to finish this job off, what we're going to do is just grab our lasso tool. So you can hit L for your lasso tool. And I'm just going to make a selection out of this area right up here at the top. Come down here and let go. Because we do have, you can see we have this white border, and I want to get rid of that. So now that we made that a selection, I'm going to hit Shift, Delete, and that's going to bring up our Fill dialog. You can also go to Edit and then down here to Fill. And we're going to fill that with black on our layer mask. Alright, and then Command D will deselect. So now this is what we have on this layer. We can see we've deleted out our sky. That looks really good. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with our other layers. So this layer here, let's go ahead and do the same. So we'll start off with our Magic Wand tool, W for the Magic Wand tool. Alright, let's hold down the Shift key and click a couple times to select out our sky. Now you don't have to get all of your clouds and everything like that perfectly selected out. There we go. Alright, that looks pretty good there. Now, here you can see this actually didn't do a great job. We started selecting inside of the mountains, and it's because our tolerance was a little bit too high. So we can try lowering our tolerance. Let's hit Command D to deselect, and then try lowering our tolerance down a little bit more. And then this time we'll hit Shift and click a couple times, and it's not going to select inside of our mountain range. Alright, looking good. So hit Shift, click a couple more times. Alright, Now remember, we want to turn this into a layer mask. So I'm going to first go to select. We're going to inverse the selection. Okay. Now we're going to go to select and down here to refine edge. Now the great part is that because I hit that remember settings button, all of the same settings are still applied here. So I can just hit OK, and I don't have to change any of those numbers. I can just hit OK, and we're good to go. Let's see what this looks like on a blank background. Alright, let's click on our layer mask, and there we go. So this is now our layer with our layer mask on it. Okay, so you can see we did a really good job cutting this guy out. Now, we do still have some area that needs to be cut out, so we'll just use our lasso tool. But really, the only area that I really care about is like the edge right next to the mountains. This is super easy. Look at that, just with a lasso tool, select there, shift delete, and we're going to fill that with black on our layer mask. Okay, there we go. We have mountains with a clear sky for the backdrop. There's no backdrop there. Alright, let's go ahead and do our next one. So W for the magic wand tool. You can see you don't really need to be that zoomed in for this. You can knock these out pretty quick. Now if you've got a different way of cutting out a sky, that's totally cool too. Do whichever way works best for you. I'm just showing you the way that I prefer and the way that I feel is pretty easy as well. Alright, so we selected that out. Select down to inverse. Alright, and then down here to refine edge. Same settings, so we'll just hit OK. Alright, there we go, and we'll click on our layer mask. Cool, and now with the lasso tool, I'm able to go in here and very easily just make a selection like that. Shift delete and fill that with black. Alright, we got one more to go here. So W for our magic wand tool. Alright, there we are. Now if I need to change any of these layer masks at any point in time, I can do so, because they're just layer masks. They're not permanent, right? So I can always refine the edge of my layer masks at a later date. Okay, looking good. Select down to inverse. Okay, select down to refine edge. Let's hit OK there. Load that as layer mask by clicking down here on our layer mask button. There we go. And let's go ahead and grab our lasso tool. So L for the lasso tool. Alright, and then hit shift delete. You can choose black. There we go. Alright, so now what we have are a few different landscapes with no sky, which is exactly what we want, because this is our sky. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and crop this image in a little bit, because I don't need all this space here on the right hand side. Okay, so let's hit C for the crop tool, and now I'm just going to click here on the right hand side, and we're going to drag in. Just like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit taller. I don't know exactly what size I want this to be now, but I do know I've got a really large landscape planned out for this image, so I'm just going to give myself some extra space. Now when you're cropping in Photoshop, before you hit that checkbox up there, be sure that this option right here where it says delete cropped pixels, be sure that's not checked, because if it is checked, then like anything outside of this boundary is going to get permanently deleted when I crop, which we don't want, because remember we had all those other landscapes that extended out there. So if yours looks like this, make sure it looks like this before you're done. So do not want delete crop pixels. Alright, let's go ahead and hit that checkbox up there. Okay, there we go. So now we have our background, we have our landscape ready to go. Now the next step here sounds a little bit odd, but it's going to make sense as we work. Whenever I'm doing compositing like this, especially of things like landscapes and backgrounds and things like that, I always turn my images black and white. And I know it sounds really weird, but it's a lot easier to composite an image in black and white than it is when it's in color. And if you get it looking right in black and white, it's pretty easy to convert your colors to get it to look good in color as well. So from here to the end of the section, we're going to be building this image in black and white, And then in the next section, I'm going to show you how to match the colors. It'll be a lot easier than you think to do compositing, and it's going to make a lot of sense in the end. Alright, so let's go ahead and shift click all of those layers. I'm going to hit Command G to group them together, and we'll just double click and call this background. Alright, we can open that up. Alright, now let's create a new layer outside of there. Command G to group that with itself, and we'll just call this color for now. And inside of this color group, I'm going to create a channel mixer adjustment layer. Okay, a channel mixer basically just allows you to click this monochrome option, which gives you a very true black and white. If you wanted to bring up a hue saturation and just lower the saturation, you can do that too. Any way you want to convert to black and white, but this is the most accurate way of doing it. It's just clicking on this monochrome. Alright, it just deletes out the color. Okay, cool. So now we have a black and white image. Let's go ahead and move that down. And a bunch of these different things. You can see already, like, the color for the mountains is way more blue than the background. So like compositing that together, you might be like, oh, that's not going to work at all. Well, if you take that away, you can see they're actually, like, as far as lightness levels go, they're actually pretty similar. So this could totally work. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start off with this one, Landscape 4. Let's move that down to the bottom. So again, we have Landscape 3 is our background. Landscape 4 is going to be our mountains off to the left side. Let's just turn that into a selection and fill that with black there. Oh, on the layer mask and not the layer itself. Alright, there we go. So first thing we're going to do is go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. So I'm going to hit Command T. We're going to click on our chain link here and scale down our width and our height at the same time. Alright, make it a little bit larger, and something like that looks pretty good. So this is going to make up basically the left side of our image. We'll bring that right about to there. Okay, now the next one, we're going to save this for later, that one for later. Alright, Parallax Landscape number 2, that's going to be our next one. So this guy, we're going to bring right to about there. Alright, so we've got the faraway mountains here and the closer mountains here. Alright, now this looks pretty good, but I do want to layer mask out this area as well. So on the layer mask for this layer, alright, we're going to zoom in, and I'm going to use my brush tool. So let's hit B for the brush tool. We'll just choose a soft round brush, and I'm going to paint black on my layer mask. Alright, you can see there's like cars and stuff like that in this image. There we go. So we're just masking this away. All of that left side. What we want is basically this to fade from one image into another one. Alright, and I'm just going to leave that a little bit messy for now. Right now this is what I call the sketch stage. You don't want to be so like perfectly detailed in the sketch stage. Keep yourself free for a little bit of experimentation, moving things around. Alright, so that looks pretty good so far. Alright, the next thing, we've got our landscape here, and this is going to wind up making up the foreground of our image. So let's bring that right up to about there. I'm going to hit Command T on that. We're going to stretch this out and down a little bit and hit enter. Alright, and now here on the layer mask, I'm going to use my brush tool, and we're going to paint black with our brush tool up until those mountains there. Now, landscapes are really nice because basically if you match your light levels together and your perspective, you can pretty much make just about anything that you want. Alright, let's just zoom in there and get an idea of how our landscape is blending together. You can see really nicely. I'm going to bring this together pretty much up until the base of this other mountain here. So I'm just painting white with my layer mask now. Alright, Now we see this is starting to become this other mountain. So I'm actually going to move this up a little bit, this landscape here, so I can paint it away. So we just have, there we go, just have this landscape until it hits that other mountain. Alrighty, and we'll just fade it away there. Now, as far as our light levels go, they're not exactly lining up here. We definitely have a bit darker. These mountains in the back are a little bit darker than this image here. Right? So we're going to fix that in just a little bit. It's not a big deal. Alright, and here it's blending in really well. Alright, let's go ahead and zoom out. Alright, and that looks pretty good there. Again, it's going to blend in really well. Right now it's just a little bit too light, so we'll focus on that in a little bit. Alright, and then we have this guy, and this one we're going to bring in the way foreground, but I'm going to go ahead and flip it. So we're going to hit Command T, right click, and go to Flip Horizontal. There we go. And then we're just going to take this right to about there. And hit enter. So that'll be in our way foreground there. Alright. Now, you know what? I think we have a little bit too much room on the bottom here. So with my crop tool, I'm going to hit C for the crop tool. We're going to bring this in a little bit more on the bottom there. Okay, so you can see I'm kind of changing my crop as we go along. We're going to put people in the sky here. So I want my horizon line, which is like this line here. I want that to be pretty low so we can focus mostly on the sky. And because I don't have delete crop pixels checked, I can still move this in and out of the frame wherever I want. Alright, and now our sky, let's click on our sky here. We're just going to stretch this to just fill our image. So let's go ahead and grab this guy up here and stretch this up. Now generally when it comes to like stretching and warping and things like that, images, it's generally a bad idea. When it's a sky, it doesn't really matter as much because it's just like a person's face, obviously you don't want to like stretch and warp and do like really weird stuff to it, but a sky is just, it's fine. It's gonna look like a sky no matter what you do to it. So that's my general rule, but there we go. Cool. There we go. That looks pretty good. Alright, so now here's our sky. We're just going to create a layer under it. I'm going to grab an adjustment layer and we're going to go to solid color and I'm going to go all the way down to black. And we'll put this underneath our sky. Okay, because we want this to fade to stars. So now here in our parallax landscape, I'm going to click on my layer mask button. Alright, and I'm going to use my brush tool to paint black with black on my layer mask. Now I'm going to bring my flow really low, so I'm going to hit Shift 2 to bring my flow down to 20%, and then I'm just going to kind of paint around in like basically a pattern that I don't want to be like recognizable. I don't want this to look like Photoshop, but basically we want our sky to kind of like fade out into total black. But I don't want to just use like a gradient because it'll look like way too Photoshoppy. So I'm just kind of put it like a random pattern, and you can see I've got a really large brush here. You want your brush to be really large because we have such a large background. We would just wanted to make sure that, like, there we go. Let's go ahead and paint that black up there. We want to be sure that it looks like it's naturally fading into black. I don't want it to look like, you know, we just grabbed a gradient tool and then pushed it into black. Alright. Cool. And keep in mind, this is just a layer mask, so we can change this at any point in time. You know what? Let's bring the crop a little bit. So I'm going to hit C for the crop tool, or bring this up even more. Give our night sky a little bit more room. Alright. Cool. That looks good. Now, you know what? I think I can paint with white just a little bit to kind of like let it go back up. As long as we don't, you know, this line here, we don't want that to be visible, where it just had that like white line there. This thing here, we don't want that to be visible. So just, if you see that, grab your brush tool and paint that black. Alright, well that's a decent start. Decent start, guys. Now we're going to use clipping masks to make our sky and our rest of our images actually like really look like they're blending together. Okay, so here's how a clipping mask works. Let's go ahead and start off with this guy right here. Okay, so parallax landscape number 5. Now, if I grab an adjustment layer and I go up to my levels, okay, and I start working with my levels, you can see it's affecting everything on my image right now. So it's really hard to blend things together when everything changes at the same time, right? But if I want only this layer to change, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip this levels adjustment layer to this layer 5. So we're going to right click and I'm going to go down to where it says create clipping mask. Now you can see it pushes over and we got a little down arrow going to this guy. Okay? So now when I click on my levels adjustment layer and I change my levels here, you can see it only changes that one layer, which makes it very, very easy to composite. Let's go ahead and make that invisible, and I'm going to focus on the right hand side over here near these mountains. So we're just going to click here and I'm going to drag that to the right until it starts to kind of like fit in and work with the rest of our image. Alright, let's bring our dark levels up just a little bit as well. Alright, cool. And there we go. We can see there on the right side, it really is blending in with our image. Alright, now here on a layer mask, I can still paint black and white on my layer mask. So if I want to paint black over this way a little bit on my levels adjustment layer, it's just not going to make this area as dark. Okay? So again, it's making the right side dark, which is allowing these two layers to blend together much, much better, but the left side is staying light, which is exactly what we want. Alright, let's try it again with this guy in the foreground. So, levels adjustment layer, we're going to right click and go to create a clipping mask. Okay, and then I'm going to click and just drag this over to the right. Let's bring our dark levels up a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now, as I zoom in here, you can actually see there's still a little bit of what's called like a halo. You can see that around those rocks, and we definitely don't want that, right? So let's go to our layer mask for these guys. We'll go to select and then down to refine. Oh, select and then down to refine mask. And we can do the same thing we did earlier. Alright, basically the same exact settings, just pulling it in a little bit, and you can see there's the before, okay, and the after. It's just getting rid of that halo, which makes the composite a lot more believable. Alright, very cool. Let's bring that down there. And then here at any point, I can make these either darker or lighter to fit our image, depending on how we want our image to be. Alright, looking good. Now our sky, we want to be a little bit brighter. You see how bright these mountains are right here? I need our sky to be a little bit brighter right where those mountains are. So we're going to grab a levels adjustment layer above our sky, Option Command G to clip that, and then I'm going to click and drag this to the left till it looks like it fits with our sky right over there, right? That looks like it fits pretty well. but I don't need my entire sky to be that bright. So I'm going to click on my layer mask. We're going to hit Command I, and then this time with a large soft edge brush, I'm going to paint white right over here, just to make sure that the area that's supposed to be super bright actually does reflect that. Alright, there we go. So we can see our sky is a little bit brighter now. Okay, now we have this mountain. Let's go ahead and get this guy in place. So you can see these clipping masks makes a huge difference. Just turn those off and that's what we looked like a second ago. And now with 3 clipping masks, we're already looking like a lot more like this image belongs together. Now you can do more than 1 clipping mask per layer. So like this layer, I want to make this area even darker. So we're going to grab another levels adjustment layer. Okay, let's go ahead and clip this by right clicking and go to create clipping mask. And I'm going to drag that to the right a little bit more. Command I on that layer mask to invert it. And then we're just going to paint white here on our foreground a little bit. Alright. Cool. Alright, and then just darken our foreground up just a little bit. Alright, now this mountain here, let's go ahead and get this in place. So we'll zoom in. This mountain we just want to pull up, right until it pretty much matches with the rest of the image. Okay, I'm going to hit L for my lasso tool, and then I'm just basically going to create my own edge of the mountain. There we go. So we've got that edge there. Here on our layer mask, I'm going to hit Shift Delete, and we'll fill that with black. Alright. There we go. So right now we're looking at things from like pretty far away. We want to look at things from like, how does everything look as a whole? Alright. Maybe I can move my sky just a little bit. I think we can stretch this out a little bit more. Yeah, we don't want any of the mountains that are visible in the background. We don't want any of those visible here. Now sometimes if it's like this, if it's like, oh man, I don't want to move it lower because I'm missing all that nice detail just for like a little bit of mountains right there and there. Sometimes what we can do is use the liquify tool just to like push area down. Alright, so let's go ahead and try that. I'm going to click on this layer. We're going to go to filter and then down here to liquify. Alright, and then these are the mountains that I just need to push down a little bit. So I'm going to use my forward warp tool, and we're just going to push these down just a little bit. And the clouds still look like clouds. You just want to use a large brush so it doesn't look super weird with your clouds. Alright, let's hit OK and see if that did it. Alright, so you can see it pushed it pretty far down. Let's just do one more time. Alright, there we go. And they're gone. Alright, so this layer is making my sky a little bit brighter. Let's see about making it even brighter. Alright, looking good. Move this down a little bit so we get a little bit more detail in our sky. Alright, cool. And then we have a little bit to play around with our layer mask, as I just choose a large soft edge brush and then have that like really nice and gradually fade into black. Very large brush here. Alright. Cool. that's looking good. Now we have such nice bright highlights here in my background and on this mountain that this mountain, I think we need the highlights to be a little bit brighter. So let's go ahead and find this mountain. There we go. Let's grab an adjustment layer. We'll go to levels. Option Command G is going to clip that now, and then I can just make my brights a little bit brighter. There we go. And we'll make our darks a little bit darker, just basically upping the contrast of that mountain top there. So it kind of helps match light levels. Now you can see let's just zoom in here. My magic wand didn't do a perfect job. So what I'm going to do is just hit L for the lasso tool, and I'm just going to lasso this up. Now if you were selecting something out that had like really smooth edges, I wouldn't recommend just using the lasso tool. Like a car, for instance, right? We wouldn't want to just like use a lasso tool to select out a car, because we have to have like really nice sweeping curves. Now in this case it's the edge of a mountain, so like if I have any like if I do that or whatever, it doesn't really matter that much because it just still looks like the edge of a mountain. So a lasso tool totally works. You can see, yep, still looks like the edge of a mountain. Alright, you can shape the mountain however you want. Alright, just scrolling around. Okay, everything looks really good. Alright, off to a really nice start. Okay, well, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create some stars. So let's create a new layer above that. Now, if you've already seen the if you've already seen the parallax headshot tutorial, we already created the stars in that tutorial. If you haven't, let's go ahead and load up our brush for their stars. So we're going to go to Window and then down here to Brush. Alright, so here in your brush presets, we're going to click on this little area. It's 3 lines with a down arrow. Alright, oh sorry, it's right over here. So they moved it on me. Alright, so we're going to load a custom brush. So B for the brush tool, then right click, and you'll see this little menu here. So right click and you'll see this menu. Now let's go to this little gear. I'm going to go to Load Brushes. Alright, and now here in your parallax, there we go, parallax, under the brushes folder, you'll see parallaxbrushes.abr. Let's hit open. Alright, and it's going to give you these 2 brushes. A soft round brush, which is what I'm using for painting in the sky and stuff, and this, which is our star brush. Alright, and if you hover over it, it's 800 pixels wide. If you hover over it, it says Parallax Stars. Alright, so on this layer, we're going to paint with white. So we want our opacity to be 100 and our flow to be 100. Okay? We're going to paint with our brush tool, normal, and our white color. Alright, and now I'm going to start painting around our image. Now if your stars are too large, just go ahead and make them smaller. You can right click and change your size here. There we go. Or you can use your open and close brackets to change your size. Either way. I recommend making a few small passes and a few large. And basically I'm just clicking and dragging as I move around my image, and the star brush takes care of like spacing apart my stars and taking care of all the detail for me. So I don't have to continuously make this, like, you know, I'm not clicking 10,000 times here to make this brush. There we go. I'm simply painting around my image and the stars are filling themselves in. Alright, let's just turn that off and on. Now if some of your stars kind of like got over your landscape, that's not a big deal. Just grab your layer mask. Okay, B for the brush tool. Now we'll choose a normal, it's just soft edge black brush, and I'll paint this black over top of my landscape, just to be sure that no stars kind of came in. Alright guys, we're looking really good. Now I think This area here could be a little bit darker, kind of above that mountain there. Alright, so we're going to grab another levels adjustment layer. Option Command G to clip that. And we'll just make that a little bit darker. Okay, let's hit Command I on the layer mask. And then paint with our large soft edge brush white right over here. So this really is just like matching one background to another. Alright, and I'll just bring that up there as well. Or in this case, I guess, many different backgrounds. Alright, and I'm just going to stretch this out a little bit more. Alright. Cool. Let's enter. And we're looking pretty good. Now this foreground here, I'm going to make this area just a little bit darker. One more time. Let's grab a levels adjustment layer. Option Command G and make our lights, just bring our white point down. Hit Command I, and then I'm just going to paint white on our layer mask. Alright, just to make that area a little bit darker. Alright, and then these rocks in the foreground, let's see about making those just a little bit darker even. Okay. Very, very cool. So we can see this really wasn't too hard. I mean, we got all these like really cool elements that we can like move around and make our background and make this image just like really come together. And you can see, comprised of a bunch of different photos, we were able to get this background. So again, the reason I did this in black and white is because it helps me to composite everything together. I'm looking at light levels now, like does this look right as far as my light levels go? And it does. It looks good in black and white. It's not finished, it could use some refinements, but it does look good in black and white. So once we have it looking good in black and white, then it's our opportunity to make it look good in color. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next section. So let's go ahead and turn this off. You can see the colors don't really match. This is all blue, that's like orange, this is orange. This might give you a headache when you're trying to composite things together. But in black and white, you don't even worry about it. So that's my recommendation. Start off in black and white. Once you're good to go in black and white, doing the color is very easy. And we'll show you how to do that in the next section. Alright guys, thanks so much. We'll see you in the next section. Bye everyone.